And so what we're facing here are a Congress of majority psychopaths who have zero problem killing people and who think of the poor as less deserving than everybody else. No, they should have absolutely the least amount of money because it's their fault they're poor. And this is what we're facing here. You talk about a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is us realizing just how bad it is. And I agree with you. People were demanding something needed to pass. If people voted against that, it went back and forth. Meanwhile, people get nothing. And so while I do think it is absolutely horrible, I do see your point that something has to get done. And when you don't have the support of when you don't have a majority of the numbers as progressives, that's just not going to happen. Now, how bad is it in the House right now? Do you think this is all kabuki theater? Aside from AOC, who was one of the only people who pretty much mentioned Wall Street, I know we have Ilhan in there, Rashida, but how bad do you think Congress is, and what do you think about the influence of the progressive wing of the party in the bill? You kind of started talking about that.
Yeah, I appreciate you raising it. And the only place I'd maybe press back is when you describe the GOP being sociopaths and willing to commit people to death to protect corporate profit. The only thing I would press back on there is that entirely too many corporate Democrats have been
absolutely.
willing.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
We don't forget about that.
Oh, no.
Not on this show. Please.
Nancy Pelosi, she's an angel. Come on.
Well, and it's a point worth, sort of bearing on in two different contexts here, both the Medicare for all and the debate over how do we treat healthcare. Is it like the yacht club or is it like the fire department? And we should be giving medical care according to need. That's not crazy. To pay for medical care in an age when our public shared interest in public health is so obvious, just, it really doesn't even meet the needs of the present, let alone the future. When we look at the Progressive Caucus, when we look at Congress, I see the Progressive Caucus gaining increasing influence, and I see the CARES Act reflecting it. I see the emergence of the squad as a welcome development. It is, to some extent, a measure of Nancy Pelosi's influence that she's managed to successfully embrace the squad and encourage a rhetorical détente, such that, they now call her Mama Bear. She went to Africa with Ilhan Omar. Nancy Pelosi, I think, recognized that the squad is the future and intelligently, given the need to defend her own legacy and career, chose to conciliate with them rather than continue punching down, for instance, at Ilhan Omar. I'm glad that she stopped punching down at Ilhan Omar in public. I've heard voices online clamor for members of the squad to endorse me. And while I just want to be clear, I would be over the moon should any of them choose to endorse me. I also recognize that they have to work on Capitol Hill, and their boss for the moment is the Speaker of the House. And the last thing I want to do is complicate the work of any of my allies who are already in Washington. I'm auditioning to join them. I want to expand their ranks. I want to help them. Me getting in their way doesn't help them. So I'm happy to let the endorsements go and let them do their jobs in the meantime. Each of them independently had to find their way to Washington. I expect to need to do the same. And I'm happy to travel that road. And I hope by removing Nancy Pelosi, ultimately to create a lot of space for them to operate. She runs Congress in a way that both leverages sticks and carrots. That is to say, incentives for members to comply with her directives and support the votes that she whips for, and also penalties for people who cross her. Penalties like, committee assignments being unavailable, penalties like party support being unavailable. And it's the reason why I think so many incumbents in the Democratic Party have been unwilling to challenge the corporate paradigm, is because the leader of the Democrats in the House runs the caucus with a certain reflection of an authoritarian sensibility. And it methodologically, as much as substantively, that violates, I think, our democratic norms, and certainly does not comport with my vision of democracy and the vision of democracy that brought my family here from abroad. I see the voices of progressives in Congress getting louder also in policy. And you see this, free testing for COVID, that's a relatively, and it's not as expansive as I'd wish, that's a relatively socialist program. You can't tell me that would have passed Congress before the emergence of the squad. Certainly didn't have GOP support. And I don't know how many corporate Democrats would have supported it if they didn't have the young progressive voices of Congress's most visionary members holding them to account. There are other areas also where I see the Squad and the Progressive Caucus's influence growing ascendant, for instance, in the context of encouraging Congress to assert increasingly assertive congressional war powers vis-a-vis our criminal president. I think at least the rhetoric and the discourse, if not the policy surrounding the Green New Deal and climate change and climate chaos reflects the rising influence of progressives on the Hill. I think we need a lot more, and it's one of the reasons I'm running to remove one of the principal gatekeepers of the corporate Democratic Party.